We are reminded that the town of Bonnyville is situated on Treaty 6 land that is steeped in rich Indigenous history and is a traditional homeland and home to First Nation and Métis people today. We respect the histories, languages, and cultures of First Nation, Métis, and all First People of Canada whose presence continues to enrich our community. Before us, Council, we have an agenda. Were there any additions to the agenda this evening?
Nothing from administration, Madam Mayor.
I'll look for a motion then to approve as presented. Councillor Kushner.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I would make a motion that we adopt the March 24th, 2026 minutes. Agenda.
All in favor? Yeah.
Today's agenda, March 24th.
All right. Approved.
I just turned 65. What can I say?
Okay, we've got the meeting minutes for March 24th, 2026. Were there any changes? Additions or changes? No? Councillor Blanchett?
I will move adoption of the minutes of March 24th as presented.
Thank you. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, couple delegations this evening. We will start with Wild and Company. They are online for the 2025 financial audit. Good evening. Can you hear us? Okay, well, welcome. Thank you for your time this evening. We will open the floor and pass the mic over to you if you want to do a presentation, and then we can do some questions after.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming here this evening to present the 2025 financial statement.
Nope, not at this time.
On to the next page. So this is the statement of operations. Highlights revenue expenses throughout the year. Has decreased due to decreased interest throughout 2025. Other than that, year over year. To the other section toward the bottom of the statement, there's a variance between the budget, 7.6 million for government transfers compared to actual, and that's just for timing of projects that are completed, which I understand is going to be completed in 2020. Timing change. Overall, excess revenue over expenses of approximately 2.4 million for 2025 compared to 2 million for 2024.
Actually, I have a question. Under revenues, the gains loss on disposal of tangible capital assets, there's just a little bit of a change there, and I was just curious about that one.
So that's just the disposal, so if it has a net book value of $5,000, but you only sold it for $2,000, you have a loss. So it's just for the capital assets that have been replaced or retired throughout the year.
Okay, great. Thank you. Nope.
Statement, so the statement of change in the summary of the statement, a little bit of a different presentation here, so I'm not gonna highlight a lot of the significant numbers there, just, as you've already kind of gone over it, but just, again, just a different way of presenting that information. So the next page is the statement of cash flows. So it's essentially, I'll draw your attention to towards the bottom of the statement, it says change in cash and cash equivalents during the year. So there was a positive change in cash flows of approximately 2.3 million throughout the year. And all of the numerics above that essentially is how the change can be. Again, it's just timing of the end of the year, which was presented on the.
Nope, we're good.
The next statement is the changes in significant areas. $38.9 million is held in reserves for capital and operating earmarked for future projects that are going to occur. That's on different equity capital assets. So after considering projects, that $150 million is held in equity. Any questions on this?
Nope.
The next schedule is schedule 2, capital assets. So at the end of 2025, there was approximately $1,820,000. There's also fee related amortization at the end of the year of $112,400,000, leaving a net book value of $144,300. Again, that's just net book value of what the assets for the work. Are there any questions on?
Yeah, we've got one question here.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I just am looking into on the tangible capital assets. When the town is like a partner on any of these assets, or they're co-owned, how are those measured, and are they reflected in this statement? Okay, thank you very much.
Nope.
So the next four schedules again, we've already discussed the information on the other statements. It's just a different way of presenting that information. So I don't want to go through things we've already discussed, but it is more information if where their users are interested in seeing different presentations of programs. I will skip over those, but again, just for your interest, if you want to see expenses presented, by object or revenue expenses presented by departments, that's essentially what's presented on those. So overall, the same financial impact, just a different way. Unless there's any questions on those schedules, I'll skip over to
Yeah, we have one question.
On Schedule 6, under expenses, transportation. So there's salaries and wages, there's transportation costs. There's contracted and general services, there's transportation costs. Material, good and supplies and utilities, transportation costs. What are those actually?
the transportation department. Is that
Well, it says general government, then protective services, then says transportation, and under expenses, okay, so like roads, different projects, we're doing all that kind of stuff. Okay. Okay, thank you.
No, we're good.
Essentially, without diving into the next few pages are the safety net account policies for Bonnyville uses. So all of these account policies are used to compile our financial behavior. Reading again, don't want to go into the weeds too much, but just so that you understand how things are compiled and how the numbers how with what these policies summarize. So the next significant area I did want to look at was page 16. So new for the 27th year. So I just wanted to highlight these changes that the way that these financial statements are presenting today will be different than in 2027. So administration has already been taking some courses with various associations to make sure that they're well equipped with what that's going to look like. But I did just want to draw there are some new standards coming in 2027, and we have recommended that would help ease the transition for 2020. So I just wanted to bring that to in case you hear through your various connections about these changes. So are there
Nope.
so we want to go over too many of the more detail on all provide more breakdown on financial position or statement of operation and how those numbers are made up. So I know you guys a copy of these financials in advance. So unless there's any questions on these notes, I will go on to the last page.
Um, are there any questions on any of the notes? No, okay. I actually do have a question, and it might be more for administration, but I'll ask you. So it's on page 18, and it's in regards to the accrued wages. My question, and as I mentioned, might be to administration, is more so, is vacation and overtime, like, do we carry that over? How are we accumulating this amount? Like, what is that? What is that for?
I can take that, this one, Natasha. So we accrue wages in 2025, but we're not using them until 2026. So that's part of all of our vacation entitlements. There are also an increase in this one due to the wage increases year over year, as well as there were some approvals due to operational requirements that some staff weren't able to take all of their vacations, so we approved them to carry it over. And about 25% of that has already been used so far this year in January and February.
Right, so if I read this, included in accrued wages, so the total amount here is not the vacation and overtime
It also,
liability.
yeah, it
that's
also
being-
includes bank time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, that was good. That was it for me. We can continue.
Statements this year. There was a change for deferred revenue. There was an amount of deferred revenue in 2024 that should have been presented in reserves. So we have gone through and made that change. Due to its significance, we have also made the change in 2024. So the comparatives, if you were to look at the 2024 statements and compare it to the 2024 column in the 25 statements, it would be different. So that's why this note is included in your financials. Again, just a change in how is presented.
Okay.
That was I'd take a second to thank Vince and Renee and the entire finance team for all their hard work throughout February, March, and April to get these financial statements prepared. And I also want to thank the town of Bonnyville as a whole for continuing to choose Wild and Covington for their audit services. So if there are any other questions from council,
Okay, any other questions from council? No? All right, thanks so much for your time this evening and all the work that you and your team did to put together this audited financials, and we just really appreciate all the work you did. Thank you. All right, thank you. Okay, moving on. Next delegation, Accurate Assessment Group. Good evening. Welcome.
Yeah. Something about April showers, May flowers? No, it's not this year, not yet. Yeah, that's right, that's right.
So we'll do the same. We'll give you the floor to do your presentation, and I guess questions after or throughout, or however way you'd like to do it. And I think the microphone is on already, so we're good.
And a clicker by chance.
Oh,
Just-
Robin will do it.
just- Okay, perfect. We can, yeah. Good evening, Madam Mayor. Good evening, Council. Thank you very much for the opportunity here to discuss the 2025 assessment. Many of you, maybe all of you, have been through this before, so I will hustle through the first couple of parts because you're very familiar with it. But I may slow down a little bit when it comes to specific definitions that are important to us and such. All right, tonight's presentation agenda will be broken into three parts. The first two will be more informative in nature. The first being kind of an introduction to ourselves for anybody who may be new in the crowd or online, as well as the second part, the assessment process. And I'll just kind of quickly discuss through how the assessment process is in a given year. And then the third part will be the most interesting, riveting part probably of the night when it comes to assessment. It'll be the highlights, year-over-year changes for the town. So as many of you already know, Accurate Assessment Group has been conducting assessments since 1997, which we're coming into almost our 30th year here. We're in the coming year. And then that also includes, well, doesn't also include, it includes our work within 26 rural municipalities, 7 cities, 8 towns, all 8 Métis settlements, and 2 First Nations. It was 7 towns last year. This year it's 8. Vegreville has come on board with us. So we've been involved in their assessment. We hope to be your trusted advisor, essentially, for all things assessment related. We believe that we can be that through our team depth. We've got nearly 500 years of experience, I of which have contributed about 30 years of that now. I'm in my 30th year in the profession. And also communication. Example is tonight, communicating the assessment, what's transpired year over year, as well as data integrity and our systems and our quality checks in place. So we hope that we are your trusted advisor and continue to be. My name is Bob Dodlin, as mentioned. I also work very closely with Jesse Nelson and Corey Allen. They are the boots on the ground for the most part. They probably conduct 80% of the inspection work out there. They're measuring buildings, confirming statuses of buildings, statuses of land, etc. We also have quite an array of staff, obviously, to make up 500 years or nearly 500 years of assessment experience. 2 people I want to mention in this specific list that I don't have highlighted, but they are in the list. Troy Bertels is with our company, has been since 2002. He is the current running president of the AAA, of the Alberta Assessors Association. So that gives you an idea of what we do. We're not just a service company, but we also get involved in, I guess, the future of assessment, the current of assessment and the future of assessment within the province, and try to give some guidance as to common sense, practicality, all of that. We also have Ray Fortin in there. Everybody on staff is awesome and a great benefit, but Ray Fortin is the expert, we call him, and I think the province really calls him that, the expert in industrial assessment. Now, there's nothing specific that he would pertain to in town, but he deals with refinery situations, lumber mills, et cetera. Something that you probably can associate with are data centers. That's been a hot topic lately. Well, he is actually putting on a course at our conference coming up on data centers and kind of, I guess, talking about what's accessible and what isn't, et cetera, because that's been a very, very big topic over the last couple of years. So he's got that kind of expertise. He is cutting edge. He's the tip of the spear when it comes to industrial assessment. Next slide, property assessment overview. Property assessment is the process of assigning a dollar value to a property for taxation purposes. Simply put, assessed value multiplied by tax rate equals property tax. The assessment, with regards to assessment legislation, assessment is governed by the Municipal Government Act and 3 supporting regulations. I've mentioned these in the past. It is the roadmap in assessment and supports how we assess properties. The 3 regulations that are listed there support specifically how we assess a property or how we deal with nonprofit organizations, and as well the third one being how complaints are regulated. Any matters addressing complaints, assessment complaints. When it comes to assessment valuation, there are 4 essential classes of assessment. There's residential, non-residential, farmland, and designated industrial property. Residential assessment is assessed using a valuation standard of market value. Non-residential, the same. Farmland is a regulated rate. There are very few parcels within the town that are farmland related, but they do exist. And then designated industrial property focuses on linear assessment, primarily with trackage involved, like railroad trackage, as well as transmission, pipeline, et cetera, and some above ground situations like gas regulators and such. That type of property type or property class is assessed by the provincial assessor, not by us specifically. Market value, because the majority of assessment is residential and non-residential, or the majority of assessment and majority of parcels in the town are either residential or non-residential, market value is an important definition to know. That's how they are assessed. So market value means the amount that a property might be expected to realize if sold on the open market by a willing seller to a willing buyer. There were 3 approaches to value when pursuing market value on a property. Now, the approach that's decided upon on a specific property depends on the specific property. The cost approach is used rarely, I would say, when you look at the vast array of property types in town. Its focus is more on specialty properties. Cost approach doesn't necessarily support market value when you have a market that is active. However, the cost approach may be used in a different area of the country, the far north region where properties seldom sell. The only way to value a property is the cost approach because you don't have any sales comparisons. So another property type or situation are specialty properties. Properties like hospitals, schools, etc. Those types of properties, they don't sell day to day, year to year, lifetime to lifetime in many cases. So we will use the cost approach in those instances. The direct sales approach is used primarily for residential properties, condominium type properties. We do use that in this situation. And then the income approach, that's used for non-residential property. Now, we can use direct sales approach for non-residential property, such as retail space, office space, et cetera, warehouse space. However, those types of properties don't sell. We don't have a lot of turnover on those types of properties year over year. So we really focus on the income approach and use sales comparison to support the income approach to value. So that's how those 3 approaches are used. Mass appraisal. In Alberta, assessment is conducted using the mass appraisal technique. Mass appraisal is the process, this means it's the process of preparing assessments for a group of properties using standard methods and common data and allowing for statistical testing. Common data can include location, lot size, age, condition of the property, market rents, if we're looking at non-residential assessment, vacancy rates, those types of situations. or items, I should say. Next slide, we speak of the assessment process. So before I start with what's bulleted there, I will mention there are 3 key dates in an assessment cycle. So the valuation, I'll start with the definition of the assessment year. The assessment year is always the year prior to the tax year. So the taxes are using the prior year's assessment. So in this case, the 2026 tax year will be using the 2025 assessment in order to determine what the taxes are. The 2025 assessment has a valuation date of July 1st. So every assessment cycle, July 1st of the assessment year is the target year for assessment. That's the valuation period that we're using, the final end date. The second important date is December 31st. So with assessment, it's the condition of the property as of December 31st. The valuation date is July 1st, but the condition of the property is December 31st. So in the event that there's construction happening and it's not quite complete as of December 31st, then it's assessed as such. It's assessed prorated based on the percent complete. So that's how that works. The third important date is February 28th. That's our deadline to get to provide assessments into the province, get them into the province. We need to be completed by then. Otherwise, we would need to apply for an extension, et cetera. We have never had to do that with the town. We've always completed them on time, typically a week or two before that deadline. So regards to this slide, every property is reassessed annually, as I just mentioned, as of on July 31st of an assessment year. That does not mean it's inspected every year. It's just reevaluated every year. Property inspections, however, can include development permits, incomplete properties or progressive properties, and what we call labeled global re-inspections. It's involving the re-inspection cycle. We break the town into quadrants in this particular instance, so every property is revisited, meaning re-inspected, once every 4 years at minimum. If there is an assessment inquiry, property owner approaches yourself, approaches the town, or sees this right now, we would hope that if they have a question, we would hope that they would either contact the municipality or attend one of our open houses that we typically have. We typically have 1 or 2 open houses every assessment mail-out season, and or they can phone us directly, or they can even email us. If they do that, contact us. We hope that they would supply the information that we require. Typically, we want to verify the information that we have on file and ensure that all our data is correct. This allows us to do that if they provide the information, and also maintains the right of complaint on the assessment. Then the third is, if after we've spoken with the property owner and we've explained what we can explain, or possibly in the event that there was a reduction warranted that was offered, and the 2 parties still don't agree on the end value, then they do have the right to submit a complaint and go through an arbitration board regarding that. All right, so now we get into more interesting stuff, I guess dependent on your perspective. The year-over-year assessment change for the town of Bonnyville. So what you can see there in the grid is there was a 4% increase in residential assessment year over year. Now, residential assessment makes up approximately just under 50% of the total assessment base. So it's very, very important, obviously, very big part of the assessment base with the town of Bonnyville. So there was 4% increase. That 4% increase was made up of 2 parts. Some of it is going to be market inflation, but some of it is going to be new growth, and we'll discuss that further in a few slides. Non-residential assessment increased by 6%. Again, made up of 2 parts, growth and inflation. Linear assessment increased by 9%, a much smaller part of the total assessment base. Farmland assessment, and even a smaller part, did increase by 1%, but it is it's an insignificant part of the total assessment base, obviously, looking at the numbers. And then exempt assessment, which includes your hospitals, schools, et cetera, that assessment did go up by 11% in total. That's likely a combination of possibly some new capital projects in place or some renovations involved, and as well the cost of construction of those specialty type of constructed buildings. Are there any questions at this point, or just keep on rolling?
Will you, when you talked about the exemption, are you going to get into detail on some of those? or-
I have no detail on those, except the fact that the increase there is due to a combination of inflation or construction costs year over year, inflationary factor, as well as some, like I say, renovations, possibly some new construction, et cetera. So. It may also include, and I don't have that data in front of me, but it may include some acquisitions, moving property, moving from taxable to exempt in the case of if federal, provincial, or municipal acquisition occurred. That could be, some instances. Again, just more examples. The next slide is a graphical display of the table that I just showed you. I like graphs. This kind of depicts the choppy nature of residential over the last little while. I will have what could be assumed as some good news near the end of this with regards to the future broadcast of residential assessment. Non-residential assessment, we've got, you can see how the graph shape there. We bottomed out in 2023, and now we're starting to come back there. So that's good news on both parts. I mean, an increase year over year on both parts. And then the next slide is a combination of all of those classes put together. So it's a total assessment base year over year, and the trend, or I guess in this case, lack of trend, but the difference between year over year there, going back to 2021. The next slide is a stratification slide of assessment change. So based on percent change. And the important takeaway here is that 93% of the taxable properties in the town of Bonnyville will be experiencing less than a 10% change year over year. So by far, majority. The next slide is similar, except instead of percent, it breaks it down into dollars. You're familiar with this breakdown. I think it's more of it's a better tell of what's going on. Percents of a number can vary depending on the size of the number. So quantitatively. So here we have 78, the important factor is 78% of the properties, taxable properties in town are experiencing less than a $10,000 change in assessment year over year. A question may be, if it isn't, it will be as soon as I bring it up. There's over $1 million in assessment, 7 properties changed, and that's usually catches people's eye. Any I guess statistic where it's showing that kind of change to the number of change for $1 million or more. There's nothing under dropping $1 million or decreasing by, but 7. That's made up of 4 apartments, and I'll be speaking of apartments here in a little bit. 2 hotels increased by greater than $1 million, and then 1 linear account. This slide here is just a kind of an FYI slide. In the assessment field, we kind of look at this and it kind of, I guess, reflects a little bit of the growth situation or the activity, if you will. New accounts in 2025, we've had 3 new accounts. Obviously, it's very, very level with past years. Development permits, we've got 98, so a slight drop since the previous years. Even though a slight drop, the market was on the plus side, was an increasing market. So that's an interesting, usually those two, or not usually, but quite often those two will tie together. But in this case it didn't. But still 98 permits year over year. Now the next slide drills down a little bit further into change. Residentially speaking, as we know, there was an increase of assessment year over year of 4% with regards to residential. Dependent on the location and the property type, the increases were anywhere from 2 to 5%, typically on a market, on average, on a property, on average. There may be some instances that vary from that, but for the most part, depending on location and the type of structure or house, manufactured home, whatever it may be, anywhere from a 2 to 5% increase year over year. Now that's regarding single-family dwelling. When it comes to multifamily, specifically apartments, drastic change there this year, year over year. Of course, if you remember back a few years ago, we had a terrible decrease in the market of apartments. It was enormous. Well, we're coming back from that. We are coming back from that. There was a significant increase in the market value of apartments. This was conveyed through not only sales, but also market data or rental data, if you will, vacancy rates, et cetera. Big change. So that's a very good plus there. The next part, general commercial, so that's your downtown commercial. Land, slight increase year over year. Overall improved or occupied general commercial property, 2 to 4% increase. Of course, we spoke of the total increase to non-residential being 6%. So that's broken down further. General commercial or downtown commercial, 2 to 4% increase. Highway commercial, both land and occupied or improved, increased year over year. So the market's trending upwards there with highway commercial, anywhere from 3% to 8% for improved. And then industrial assessment, or industrial market, I should say, land, minimal change year over year, but the overall improved 2 to 4% increase. So all three sectors have incurred an increase in market value year over year. And when I say year over year, keep in mind assessments as of last year, 2025. So it's 2025 over 2024. All right, now if we focus in on residential assessment, we know that there was a 4% increase year over year. This is my second presentation today. So 4% year over year. That's broken into two parts, as I mentioned. There is new construction and there is market change. New construction constitutes about 1.2 million of that of new growth, or 0.2% increase year over year. Market change, roughly 4%. So if you add those two up, it's 4.2%. Rounded, 4%. That's where we come up with 4% for a year-over-year gain in residential. With regards to non-residential assessment, the next slide, we have 0.7% in new construction or growth, and 5.4% year-over-year market change. Again, summing up to a rounded 6% figure year over year. Moving out of figures and now moving into inspection, or I guess current and future inspection schedule. In 2025, you can see the red highlighted areas is what was inspected residentially. As I mentioned earlier, the town is broken into 4 parts. So we re-inspect every property once every 4 years minimum. So when we did that inspection, and every year we do a re-inspection of this, it's typically visual in nature. There are occasions where we knock on a door if we see renovations have occurred, or there's a sale on a property and it just doesn't seem to fit the model. Why did it sell for so much or so little? So there are instances where we will speak with owners. If the owner's out cutting his grass, we'll probably speak to him then too. But for the most part, properties don't change much over a 4-year period. So if we, and we will have a photograph of the last time we were there. Many well, Jesse or Corey probably remembers it, because when you're in the industry for 15, 20 years, you start to remember pretty much every property, to tell you the truth. But yes, we look for renovations, we look for removals of buildings. Sometimes there'll be a 1940 garage that's been neglected for the last 30 years, and it's time to come down, and the property owner, it might only have a $5,000 value, and the property owner thinks, no, I'm gonna build a new garage, so I'm gonna wipe that one out. So they do it, but they never let the town know this. So this is all part of maintaining accurate data. That's an example. There's probably better ones out there. And then the 2026 area, or the green highlighted area, is what we'll be focusing on this coming year. So again, we'll be looking for physical changes to properties. That's what we'll be doing. Now that's residentially speaking. All the area that you see on that map that isn't actually colored, it's essentially clear or have a white color within the cadastral boundaries. Those properties are visually inspected annually. Those are typically commercial or farmland, that type of a property where status changes can occur, a piece of farmland can change over a year, going from farm to non-farm based on the fact if they strip the soil out, strip the topsoil off and prepare it. Well, there's a big difference between assessment of farmland and assessment at market value, a huge difference. So we make sure that that is monitored annually, as well as when it comes to commercial properties, we want to make sure, or non-residential properties, I should say, which include commercial and industrial. We will observe those looking for vacancy changes, tenant changes. If we see if there's a property that's been vacant for 3 years and then there's a new tenant in it, well, we record that from going from vacant to improved or occupied. It helps us with when we conduct our vacancy analysis. That's one thing. Secondly, we know we're pretty certain that there's a lease in place for this. So this lease is very important to us when we're doing our market rent analysis for using the income approach to value to evaluate these properties. So again, we re-inspect those properties annually. The last slide, before I get into the 3 bullets, and the 3 bullets are the same as they were in previous years, but before I get into that, probably the most interesting of this is looking into that crystal ball and trying to determine where assessments are going for budgeting purposes. We find that every municipality enjoys this part because at least it helps them, gives a little more information when it comes to maybe mid-budgeting, in which will happen, I guess, in 9 months and all of that. So what we have, and I had mentioned there's some good news here, single-family dwelling sales so remember, 2025 assessment is as of July 1st of 2025. So we don't consider any sales post that date. However, for the 2026 assessment, we will consider all sales from that point all the way to June 30th, 2026. So right now we have access to 8 months of sales up to the end of February. And those sales for single-family dwellings show that the market has increased anywhere between 7 and 9% since then. And I could even, I hate to go to double digits, but it does show that we may be looking at a very strong year here. Now, we still have 4 months of sales to go, so we'll see what happens. But right now, it looks very positive, and it's unlikely that the assessment will be decreasing year over year. It will likely be increasing and at a more healthy rate, or at least equivalent to this last year. Duplex situations, 6 to 8% year over year so far, using 8 months of sales. So that's quite a strong change year over year. When you consider other parts of Alberta, it's almost, when I say other parts, I'm speaking not so much of small town rural, but of bedroom communities. It's opposite right now. Things are going in an opposite direction. But that's kind of always the case with regards to marketplaces. When you get out from, the urbans will be on the kind of the tip of the spear, and then everything kind of follows after that. Well, here we are. We're increasing by the looks of it year over year, and Ledukes, Beaumonts, Chestermeres, they're decreasing. You know, that's the prognosis right now when I look at the sales. So that's interesting to note. Good news, apartments specifically, I spoke of though, they'll be increasing again. There's been a couple of sales here not too long ago that support that. So we're expecting that the income data that we'll be receiving will support that as well. Non-residential assessment looks positive at this point, but I really hate to put a guess on that one because, like I'd mentioned, there's very few sales in a given year. So if we have a half a dozen sales, it's very difficult until they're validated, till they're deemed usable, and we see some income data from this type of real estate. It's very difficult to say what direction it's going to go, but it looks positive at this point. So now moving on to the bullets and the end of my long-winded presentation. The first thing here is we'll be preparing for the upcoming assessment notice mail out, taking inquiries, giving clarity, and addressing concerns. That's typically done between May and July. So we are looking forward to that and preparing for that. The second bullet is preparing the RFI letters, as well as preparing for re-inspections, which we'll be conducting usually any time, depending, sometimes it's weather dependent, but usually we just schedule it somewhere between June and September. That's most daylight, The sun isn't at a 45 or less and is difficult for pictures, etc. So yes, that's what we'll be doing during that time. And then the third note there is come fall, anywhere from October to even as late as January, we'll be inspecting new permits, completing market analysis, etc., preparing the 2026 assessment at that point. So at that, I am finished with my presentation, and I welcome any questions that there may be. I do have, if council is interested, some comparisons with regards to the residential change in other communities that we are familiar with, just to kind of base what, we have a 4% residential change here. If you're curious, pardon me, I can share some of those figures if you'd like.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I can, I'll give you an example. So we know 4% year-over-year residential increase for the town of Bonnyville. Westlock incurred a 6.3% year-over-year increase. The town of St. Paul, pretty much minimal change, just a 0.5% increase year-over-year there. Of course, Bonnyville specifically, 4.3% is the figure there. Rocky Mountain House, 5.5% year-over-year. The town of Vegreville, 5.6%. City of Cold Lake, 3.5%. So that gives you a kind of an understanding of where, 4% year over year is right in the midst of all of that. So yeah, if I were to give examples of the counties or the surrounding counties, the county of St. Paul, 7.8% year over year. Smoky Lake County, 7%. Of course, I'm unfamiliar with the MD of Bonnyville. County of Two Hills, 2.3%. County of Flagstaff, 3.9%. Lamont County, 8%. So that's in all those areas, we've actually got a gain. Things are going up. Yeah. So I do have further statistics regarding separating market versus growth, but I think that probably is enough, unless there's a question on it. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that in-depth presentation. I do have questions, but I'll open it up to council and see what questions they've got. Who wants to go first? Councilor Kushner.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just in regards to like the development permits are down at 98 compared to 140 last year. And yet we're up 4.3% residential and basically everything's went up. What would be driving that?
That's an excellent question, Madam Mayor. I don't really have an answer for you on that. It would be speculation at best for me to say. It could, I guess items I would consider would be interest rates, for example. Now they have been dropping, so I would expect that to, change the direction of permitting possibly. But I know I really can't answer that. That it would be total speculation. I don't think I have the knowledge to speculate on that with the town.
I just thought that was really interesting that we have way less development permits and yet everything's went up in price. So I don't know, that's interesting.
I guess if I can, it may or may not have an affiliation of the two. It depends. If we were to, this is total permits. If we were to look at just construction permits, well, then there may be a much more parallel to that. But this is total permits. So this will include anything from temporary signs to whatever. So that's all I can say is I wouldn't necessarily take the relationship as gospel. It's just information. That's all.
Perfect. Thanks, Bob.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Councilor Langridge.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Bob, for your presentation. Walk me through the terminology you use here for residential and non-residential inflation.
Sure, Madam Mayor, if I can. Inflation is market. We'll call it market growth or market change. That's the term that's synonymous with inflation. If in a given year properties drop, we would call that deflation. So hopefully that gives some context to that. And when we look at residential versus non-residential, it's pertaining to the assessment class. So if there is market inflation in residential assessment, then that means the market values have increased year over year. And if it was deflation, then it means it's decreased year over year. Same applies to non-res.
Yeah, so I just wanted to, I guess, put that into context that it's not based off of the rest of the province or the country or anything like that. It's market by market. And I mean, for the past 4 years, Bob, we've been pretty doom and gloom together with you, right? Talking about, you know, how many decreases, it's been negative over negative. And I have a hard time believing that we're going from, you know, last year negative 1.1% to 2025 of +4. And there hasn't been, I mean, we do see our community getting busier. It's just even with all of those combined, I mean, it was just a surprising number to me to see it increase as much as it did from year previous. I just don't see it happening that quickly, but I guess if the numbers prove it, that's basically what you guys are going off of for a lot of this.
Madam Mayor, if I can, absolutely. We use the market, the sales that have occurred. So we'll use 3 years of sales, dating back, in this case, back to July 1st, 2022, and we will use all of sales between then and June 30th, 2025, and we will time adjust those sales because we can determine what kind of market growth there is during that time. So a 3-year-old sale of a house, and in many instances, or some instances, a property may sell twice over a 2 or 3 or 4 year period. We can calculate a time adjustment and come up with what its present value is. Okay, so what we do, I guess, is we will use those sales and determine what the time adjustment is, and then compare that to the previous assessment, and that allows us to ascertain what the market's done year over year. The figures that you're looking at, be it 1% decrease or 4% increase, in the 30 years I've been doing this career, those are actually relatively standard figures in change in market, especially when you look at what's happened between 2005 to 8 and then 2012 to 14, where property changes would change 1% a month easy in those instances. So I guess I would just ask you to consider those figures as really not alarming when you look at it. I did give examples of market change year over year in other jurisdictions, and it's supported by sales data as well. So it may be surprising to you, but it is actually, in our experience, not surprising at all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Sherwood?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Excellent presentation, and it's great to hear after all these years that we are in a growth mode, and the assessment's higher compared to what we've had in the last few years. Just a couple of questions. When will the open house be? And that'll be once I'm assuming once the assessment, everybody has their assessments. And you had mentioned something earlier that I don't recall, that the assessments are sent to the province. And what is done with them when the province gets it?
Absolutely. So with regards to your first question, the open houses are, I'll define that first. It's a situation where we are available to speak one-on-one with property owners, and they're typically scheduled once we establish when mail out will occur, the precise date, then we'll schedule them to be 2 to 3 weeks after mail out, possibly even a month after mail out. And we'll set up 1, 2, 3 dates, whatever is thought to be required. With regards to submission of the assessment, so every year assessors, the appointed assessor for whichever municipality has to submit the final assessment into the province for an audit process. So there are assessment auditors on staff with the province that review the assessment, look at the assessments of properties, and compare that to the sales that have happened to make sure that there is a correct relationship, that we're within so many percent of sale prices, and also to make sure that the integrity of the data is correct, to make sure that assessments of sold properties aren't the only ones that are changing, but if a sold property's assessment changes, then a similar property that hasn't sold should change as well, because the market is supposed to lift or decrease every property similar in nature. So that's what happens. As well, the assessments are used by the province to determine the equalized assessment. They look, once they get all the assessments from all municipalities, then they look at the budgeting for school, et cetera. I am not an expert in that side of things. I'm sure that Renee could probably speak much more on that than I could, but that's the purpose behind it. And it is I guess, a check, if you will, by the province that the assessment is completed. It's legislated to be completed by February 28th. And the only way for them to do that with the number of municipalities is for us to submit them digitally online and then declare that assessment efficiently anyways. Yes,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, I do have a few questions. Okay, so going back, so it's not new growth that's driving the assessment, it's the market value of the residential. And as well as the non-residential, but you did talk about apartments. You also mentioned hotels and one linear account, but you didn't really, kind of just mentioned it, but I was wondering if you can give us more insight on what what's going on in those areas that's driving the increase.
Okay, thank you for the question. Apartments, yes. Hotels, so hotels are a specific type of property type, and they're assessed based on performance. The performance of hotels in general have been improving in town. Now, when I mentioned that there were two that increased greater than 1 million, does not mean that the others didn't increase or change at all. It just means that the threshold of $1 million was met by two of them, 1 million or greater. So generally speaking, without getting into the specifics of a property, it's just market value of that property type has changed, specifically those two more than maybe the others. And with regards to linear, I can't really discuss that because I'm unaware, or at least not prepared. I mean, we do have feelers out there and we could find out what changed specifically. But if there was any, I guess, replacements of lines per se by TELUS or by any, ATCO or anything like that, any upgrades of substations, that all can play a drastic effect on a specific linear account. So, I mean, I don't have the answer for that because we don't prepare those assessments. Or there is possibly a specific circumstance that you know of that might have addressed that? Oh, okay.
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Gotcha.
No.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, no, excellent. Thank you for that. Definitely good news, but I also would agree that, from everything that we've been hearing, market's starting to pick up around here, and hopefully it'll continue, again, from the conversations that we hear and we see that it's starting to get busy, and hopefully we get some new homes that also, can add to this too, the new market value and not just the.
Absolutely, I agree. And according
Yeah.
to what I've analyzed here, in the last 8 months, it does look like positive. Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. We would disagree with that. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. I think that's all from us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, super. Thank you for letting me present. I appreciate it, and thank you. Yeah. Have a good evening, and thank you for the privilege of your time tonight.
We appreciate your time and
I'm out of
drive
words.
safely.
Thank you.
Yes, safe travels. Thank you. All right. Yes.
Pardon me? Oh, gee. Thank you.
Okay, on to the next item. As indicated on the agenda, we have a bylaw which requires council to move into public hearing. We've approved the first reading of this bylaw, and we will move into public hearing for bylaw 1613-26. I will look for a motion to move into public hearing. Councillor Johnson.
I'll make the motion to move into public hearing.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Okay, I now declare the public hearing open, and I'll turn it over to administration to introduce the item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The town has received an application to rezone a portion of the property located at 3702 50th Avenue, as illustrated in Schedule A of the amending bylaw. The applicant is requesting a change from an urban reserve to an R3 medium-density residential district. This zoning would allow for the creation of 4 medium-density residential lots intended to accommodate the development of new medium-density housing. The proposal supports expanded housing options and promotes well-planned residential growth within the community. In accordance to the Municipal Government Act, all required advertising and public notifications for this rezoning have been completed. Detailed considerations such as parking, site access, site design will be reviewed at the development permit stage and by the Municipal Planning Commission, ensuring technical requirements and neighborhood impacts are fully addressed prior to construction. Recommendation that council hold a public hearing for amending bylaw 1613-26.
Okay, thank you, Joe. So I'm just going to ask if there's anybody present who'd like to speak for or against this bylaw. Okay, all right. So before we begin, I just want to remind us of the purpose of the public hearing. We're here to discuss the relevant proposed rezoning. I'm going to ask you to come forward, state your name for the record. Please keep your comments concise and respectful. Let us know if you're for or opposed, and you can direct your comments to myself, the chair. Council may ask clarifying questions, but we're primarily here just to listen. I'd also ask that we don't have repetitive comments. If a subject has been brought forward for or opposed, we don't need repetitive comments after that. Anyways, all right, so please come forward. Good evening. Okay, and we'll give you 5 minutes, 2 minutes. Okay, we'll give you 5 minutes. As I mentioned, just state your name and then you can.
My name is Lucille Ramos. Thank you, Madam Mayor and councillors. We are residents of 38 A Street and 47th Avenue. We have drawn up a petition letter and had a discussion with our residents, and the majority of us have signed this petition letter, which I will give you a copy of. And to save time, I will read it, if that's all right. And it's file number LUBA 26002, letter dated March 28th, 2026, Town of Bonnyville Planning and Development Department, regarding opposition to amend Land Use Bylaw 1613-26. Dear Bonnyville Town Council, I am writing, meaning the residents collectively, I am writing to express my strong opposition to the proposed mentioned bylaw changing the zoning from urban reserve to medium density residential development in our neighborhood. I believe that this project would have a detrimental impact on our neighborhood. First and foremost, the proposed development is simply too large for our area. The increase in population density would put a strain on our already overburdened infrastructure on our street, leading to increased traffic congestion, noise pollution, and a strain on our public services. Our local street cannot hardly handle the traffic we have now, let alone an increase in multiple families, raising safety concerns for our pedestrians and children. Then there is the parking congestion that multifamily units create, a high parking demand that spills onto the street, blocking emergency vehicles, and reduce street parking for current residents. Our street is currently only able to safely have one vehicle at a time be able to comfortably drive down the street, which brings us to another huge problem. We use that spot at the end of the street, the circle, to turn around to get to our homes. Multiple families bring multiple vehicles. There will be no space to turn around. 4 or 5 unit homes adds an additional 20 to 40 vehicles to travel down our street and try to park. Among the additional vehicles, there is also the additional collection of waste bins. Our town waste collector already has issues turning around at the end of the street. Now, add 40 cars and 20 waste bins to that issue. We also feel this is unfair spot zoning in favor of the developer over the community, not to mention the multi-unit housing incentive grant program the town has. Again, this change seems to serve the private developer, not the public welfare. The current land space and street is simply too small to accommodate that many homes. How does this affect our property value? When we bought our home, we were told it would be single-family homes. This was a key feature in why we chose this neighborhood. In conclusion, we strongly urge you to reconsider this proposed land use bylaw to keep it zoned as urban reserve. While we recognize the need for more multi-unit homes in our community, we believe this project is simply not a right fit for our neighborhood. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Sincerely, the residents of 38 A Street, and most of them have signed it. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to speak for or against?
Go ahead.
Yeah, Brighton Coleman, opposed. And I guess the main comments that, as Lou had pointed out before, were there's definitely some questions that this arises for the reasonings why. It would be going from, the residential style to the dense style that we are proposing here. The concerns that we had seen, or specifically myself that I had looked down, I don't think we even have the proper amount of risers for sewer and water anyways. So we'd be looking at most likely, and this is just estimation being in the construction business, that we would have to be adding risers for water line and sewer anyways, which if we are doing so, the reasoning would be, well, why are we not using the remaining space of the land that's open out? Maybe it's not the developer's land. I'm not sure. Those are obviously questions that I'm not aware of, but if we have to be upgrading sewer lines and water lines and adding those anyways, the street is quite small. It is, there's a lot of blind spots, as Lou's letter said. There's concerns for emergency vehicles. There's children playing there. There's a park very close by to that street. So those are just a few things off the top of our heads that we were thinking of what this might pose for concerns. I don't think homes in that same area would be an unrealistic option. That's how it was zoned before. That's how the risers are right now. It would be, I think, a 12 total amount from what I had counted visually for those versus the 20 proposed homes, which adds an extra 8 on top of that. So yeah, I guess that's on top of her letter, which captured a lot. Those were some of my thoughts and concerns, which be really curious to see how the parking situation and the street development would look prior to saying anything for this development. If there's something that shows some great parking strategies and entries and exits. Because right now, as mentioned, there's only one exit. We've kind of used the back alley and made our own path through the cul-de-sac that leads to the west as we head out. But I mean, that's not a paved area there. So aside from that, I don't think I have anything else right now. Thanks for your time.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You
My
can
name
just state
is
your name.
Ariba Arshad, and we have just moved into the street about 6 days ago. And we moved in basically for the safety. I have a younger brother who is extremely autistic, and he has a special bus that comes in through that loop. And for it to be able to leave, we need to have that space that we need. And also the safety, we moved from a street that was quite busy because there's a lot of housing. So he likes to play. Sometimes he runs out of the house without our control. So we want the street to be able to be safe for in case anything was to ever happen to him. This was our main reason because there are not many housings around and streets. So we would like the street to remain how it is so that we can continue to live here and he can have a safe place to like play, and there's a park around there too. It's mostly just a concern of all the cars that would be moving in and out and how fast they would go and just the amount. So we would like the street to remain how it is.
Thank you very much.
Thank
For
you.
your time. Appreciate it. Anybody else who'd like to speak for or against? Okay, I appreciate everybody coming out and sharing, and, but at this time, there being no further business, before the public hearing, I now declare the public hearing closed. I'll ask for a member of council to move and return to regular session, please. Councillor Schroen.
I move that we move into regular session out of closed.
All in favor? Carried. Yeah, yes. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, no, we really appreciate you coming out.
Thank you.
So much. Okay. Okay, moving right along. We will move into amending land use bylaw 1613-26. My mic was on. Who's looking after this one?
I'll
Joe.
again, Madam
Okay.
Mayor. Thank you. Administration has received an application to rezone a portion of 3702 50th Avenue as shown on Schedule A of the amending bylaw. The applicant is proposing to rezone this area from urban reserve to R3 medium-density residential to enable the creation of 4 medium-density lots for the development of medium-density residential units. All advertising and notifications required have been completed in accordance with the MGA. Any matters related to parking, access, or detailed site design will be reviewed and addressed through the development permit process and by the Municipal Planning Commission. One of the key issues, as everyone knows, housing is becoming hard to find, not only in our area. So one of the options to help alleviate some housing issues is to build higher density housing. And it's a recommendation that council provide second and third reading to amending land use bylaw 1613-26.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it up to council questions or comments. Councillor Schroen.
Yes, thank you. Through to administration. So currently, this piece of property is not subdivided at all. Like it's just one raw piece of land.
That is correct. It's part of the main quarter section that was
Okay.
yet to be subdivided.
So, and in what, like the gentleman spoke and like what we had talked earlier, so if they were to subdivide it, that would add an extra 12 homes to that area without doing any
Actually, I looked at the preliminary drawings and it's 14 lots that would be in there. So 7 on each side is what they had projected when they had done the subdivision initially.
Okay, thank you. And where I'm going with that is if we left it at UR, he could still apply for a subdivision for those 14 lots.
It'll have to go through the rezoning through, I think it's an R2B in that zone. So they'd have to rezone that section to R2B before he does the subdivision.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Langridge.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through to administration. So just want to address some of the, what I would say would be valid concerns from our public hearing that we just had. So the increased traffic, Well, first off, I'll jump on what Counselor Sharoon said. So currently it's zoned urban reserve, but it was never intended to stay urban reserve.
Correct.
So I guess the notion or hope that it would stay as is, as an open field, it was never intended for that to happen. And that regardless if they were to rezone it R3 into 4 lots, they would still look to rezone it to the designate R2B, which could create up to 14 lots as per the initial drawings of the development.
Correct.
So, although I agree with the concerns, but they did, in that area, it was always meant to be, even if it was single-family dwellings, there could be 14 single-family dwellings. And they could also be equipped with basement suites if they were wanting to as well,
That is correct.
without us being able to, again, it's not on us to hold things as urban reserve when the developer has developed it all. So if this were to go through and be zoned to R3 of 4 lots, has the developer or anyone spoken to what size? Are they looking at duplexes, fourplexes, eightplexes?
Initially, when I was talking to the developer, he said he had started looking at doing 8 duplex buildings, each with a legal suite for a total of 32 living units.
Okay.
And then also now they're looking at doing 4 buildings, each containing 5 townhomes, and they want to put at least 2 legal suites in each of those 5 units. So like you'll have a 5-unit building, 2 of those units are going to have basement suites. So that brings them up to 28 units, living units.
Don't forget the application is going to come.
No, for sure, and I'm getting, yes, I understand that. I just want to make sure that, all of the objections are
For sure.
are heard. From the parking side of things as well, it's been quite well voiced by this council that parking was a big concern of ours after we've seen some of the subdivision and developments previously done in the Bow Vista area where it's the fourplexes and that are cramped. So all of that would be addressed in the development permit stage where those stipulations could be set forth.
Correct.
And would they have any grounds to appeal if they feel those are too restricted?
If grounds, no, because our land use bylaw basically states for any dwelling, you have minimum 2 on-site parking stalls. That's for any single-family dwelling in town. So when it comes to commercial, multifamily, we figure out the required number of parking stalls.
Okay,
And then we indicate that they have to have enough parking stalls to accommodate on-site parking. So if everybody was there, not parking on the street, there's enough parking in their parking lot to accommodate all the vehicles.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to go a little further with that. With the project being unknown, it's very hard to figure out if parking is going to be an issue or anything else. Tonight's public hearing was on the rezoning of the bylaw. You will have a chance at MPC to review the project, at which time all referral letters, and Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, will be going out for any concerns that will be brought in and be part of the application that's submitted to you during the MPC process.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Madam Mayor, through you to council, further even to Renee's comments. This application wasn't a blindside. We knew it was coming. We've been in talks with the developer coming forward to say what would the appetite be for any type of change. And I would suggest that administration has been incredibly clear to the developer that we are going to be very strict when it comes to off-street parking, where Joe had mentioned on-site parking. We're referencing parking that doesn't exist on the street. So they're going to have to find multiple places in each one of those dwellings to be able to accommodate parking. Most of that would likely come from the back lane rather than off the street.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Sharon?
Yeah, just another question / comment. I've driven there a few times over the last 2 weeks, and it is one way in and one way out. If you were to meet somebody, you'd have to back up. So, where I'm going with this is as we look at our new bylaws moving forward, um, perhaps we could also consider the width of the streets, like for something like this. You know, when we're approving a subdivision plan or whatever, I know this is all before our time, um, like the width of the streets is something, because then now our backs are up against the wall here. Like, you know, I don't want to stop development, but they do have, they have very good comments. Like I know, yeah, even with the 12 homes, but that's what would be, you know, acceptable in there or currently zoned for that. So just moving forward, that would be something that, you know, perhaps we should look at and looking for the future.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments to administration? Councillor Kushner?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. So the parking is an issue. They also brought up the fact about the sewers and risers. I don't even know what risers are, but I'm assuming it's bringing the water up is all I can think of. Is that an issue? Do we know any of that kind of stuff yet or anything?
As far as I know, when they did that cul-de-sac, all the services have been put in for single-family dwelling.
Right.
I don't know what he's referring to as risers, unless he's referring to the cleanouts, the sewer cleanouts. I can't see, it's no different than, they're gonna have to do their tie-in if they need a 6-inch line. They're gonna have to tie into the services and either put a 6-inch or 4-inch or whatever.
So I know there hasn't been a plan brought forward really going forward of what's going to be built there or anything else. They're still in that planning stage, right? They're not going to make any decisions until we make a decision. I get that. But I brought this up the last time, that lane that goes in on the north side there, that would go across. Do they have any appetite into making that into a lane to the north of this property so that you can have another out at that point?
So they can access 39A Street, that new
Yeah.
one? We can talk to Jim about it for sure.
Yeah, because I think that would alleviate a lot of these one in and one out issues, and then you can get them through. And from what you were explaining, there's 14 lots there. That's what it was pretty much zoned for at that time.
Yeah.
And with suites, that's 28.
Yes.
And so you're looking at, the original one was right around that 28, but now it's up to like about 40, correct? With the 5 and the 5, no?
Well, there's either 32 units if they were doing duplexes with suites, or if they're doing the townhomes, it would have been 28 living units.
28. So 28 is 28. It'd be pretty much the same thing. You're not making the density any more at that point.
Not if everyone had a suite, no.
Yeah. So I think the big thing here is the water, the sewer. You would think that it would be good enough. And then that lane, maybe if we can get them to see that, if we can put that lane out there. And not only that, the lane on the west side, make that an actual lane rather than, a goat trail that it is right now. I think it would make
Well, on the east side?
It'd be the west side, on the west side. Yeah. Yeah, it's on the west side. So that way, because that's what they use to get out now, right? They go out that way, down that back alley by the apartments there, right?
Our new 39A Street.
Yeah. So if we can come up with that, I think that would solve a lot of the issues there, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think a lot of this information will be, depending on what they bring as a proposal of what they want to build. We'll be able to either answer our questions or we'll be able to ask questions specific to the exact project. Right now, it's a lot of hypotheticals, I would think. But I think we're back to, we need to make a decision on the bylaw itself. We've done the first reading. Do we want to go ahead with second and third reading? And so I'll put it out to council. If there's no other questions, sorry. Go, Counselor Schrum.
Yeah, just one more
sorry.
question. So
Yeah.
if we do switch it or approve it tonight to go to R3, that kind of leaves the door wide open. And then we cannot go back to, so it can't be an urban reserve even if we went with those 14 homes, correct? That's when you said it had to go to an R2B zoning.
Sorry, and then just also to clarify, even with rezoning to the R3, they still could just do a single-family home, or does it, wouldn't have to be rezoned to this?
Correct.
Yeah,
See, the process right now, we're rezoning the property, then we're gonna get the subdivision application. That's when we'll know if they're doing 4 lots, 6 lots, 14 lots,
got it.
and then we'll get narrow it down to what kind of a project they're working on. So by the time they do the subdivision, I'm pretty sure they would know if they're doing duplexes, semi-detached, or townhomes.
Counselor Blanchett, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one clarifying question regarding to your point. So if we rezone to R3, permitted uses on that one is duplex dwellings, minor home business, semi-detached. So those ones would never come back to MPC because they're permitted, correct? We would only see it again if they apply for like row housing.
Correct. Or if they were gonna try to put, if they were gonna do it to 4 lots, but try to put 2 buildings on that one lot, 2 duplexes or 2 semi-detached.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, council, any other questions? No? Counselor Langridge?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I just want to clarify that regardless, it's currently at urban reserve, regardless of if we were to, say, defeat the bylaw tonight and to go in R3, and they would come back and wanting to put single-family dwellings on those lots. A lot of the concerns that were brought up would be still, they wouldn't be valid, because no matter what, you're gonna have parking concerns, you're gonna have increased traffic, and they would say safety concerns, and that would just be with single-family dwellings. So that's the unfortunate part, that a lot of the concerns regardless would still happen if you put single-family dwellings there, or if we were to rezone it to R3, and that, again, unfortunately, if you purchase some of those lots for the sake of thinking it was gonna stay urban reserve, that's the unfortunate part, because the development was always meant to go forward. So am I summarizing that correctly through to administration?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Counselor Kushner?
I'm prepared to make a motion for second reading on amending bylaw 1613-26.
Did you have a question? Counselor Johnson first?
It's okay, you can do it.
No problem.
Don't mind.
Just one quick one, just to clarify. So if they were single-family dwellings going in, it wouldn't be coming back to us anyways,
It would not.
right? So this at least gives us some opportunity for some control for parking and everything in the future in that area when they come back with row housing or that.
Yeah, because they'll have to submit their parking plan and everything with the development permit application. So at that point, we get everything and we can say yay or nay.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does your motion still stand?
It does.
Okay, so we motion on the floor for second reading. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, second reading has passed. Are we open to third reading this evening? Blanchett?
I will move third reading of the same bylaw.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? That's been carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Reserve transfers, 2025 year end.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In accordance with policy number 07FN049, a council motion is required to transfer funds not budgeted to and from the operating and capital budgets to reserve. At the February 24th council meeting, council approved several transfers for the 2025 year end, with the exception of the amount to cover the C2 deficit and the amount from the 2020 ID 349 and deferred revenue that is not restricted, which was talked about tonight as the last note of the financial statements. Administration is recommending that council approve the transfer of $46,193.69 from the C2 operating reserve and the general operating reserve to cover the deficit, as well as further recommending that council approve the transfer of $1,307,469.30 from deferred revenue to the general capital reserve, as these funds are not externally restricted, as was the case with the 2019 regional ID 349 funding.
Okay, thank you. Questions for administration? All right, we're looking for a decision, please. Councilor Johnson.
I'll make the motion that council approve the attached listed transfers to and from operating and capital reserves to finalize the 2025 year.
All in favor? Carried. Next, approval of the 2025 audited financial statement.
There is no backup for this, but the financial statements that were presented this evening, we do need a formal motion to approve those statements.
Okay, any questions on them? No? All right, Councillor Schroon.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2025 audited financial statements as presented earlier.
Thank you. All in favor? That's carried. All right, 2026 final operating budget draft.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The 2026 final operating budget, as attached, totals $35,889,445 and reflects updated costs since the passage of the interim budget in December 2025. Without adjustments to municipal property taxes, this budget reflects an additional $121,358 deficit since the interim budget was approved. Council direction is required on a property tax increase option to balance the 2026 operating budget while maintaining current service levels. Administration has provided 3 options for council's consideration regarding property tax increases for the 2026 year. These options include the option 1, a residential tax dollar increase of 2% with non-residential tax rate to be charged at 1.6, 1.65, or 1.7 times the residential tax rate. Option 2 would be a residential tax dollar increase of 2.5% with similar tax rate increases for non-residential properties. And option 3, a residential tax dollar increase of 3% with the non-residential tax rate to be 1.6, 1.65, or 1.7 times the residential rate. The interim budget included a proposed residential municipal tax dollar increase of 2% with a non-residential tax rate equal to 1.7 times the residential tax rate. Due to an increase in assessments and growth, this option now would generate an additional $366,884 over the $498,000 included in the interim operating budget. Continuing with this option would still require a reserve transfer to balance the final budget, but it would be reduced from $607,000 to $240,000. The above options do not include taxes related to provincial school requisitions, which have increased 5.14%, or the Lakeland Lodge and Housing Seniors requisition, which has decreased 6.84%. Some changes to note from the interim operating budget include the insurance premiums, which have decreased overall to reflect the actual costs. Utilities have increased to reflect 2025 consumption. Assessment retirement accretion expense has decreased to reflect the 2025 discount rates. And there's other various minor increases and decreases in revenue expenses where needed. Under protective services, fire and 911 contract has increased $177,130. We do have an offsetting reserve transfer in there that we had on hold to bring in $103,546 to offset this increase. Under public works, we have an increase in equipment repair and maintenance costs for $25,000, fuel costs for $25,000, and snow removal costs of $200,000. We have also included a reserve transfer of $164,750 in revenue to help offset the snow removal costs, and the addition of a casual summer student for $21,399. We are requesting council provide direction to administration on a preferred property tax increase option to be included in the final operating budget to be presented for consideration and approval at the April 28th, 2026 council meeting.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions? Let's kick it off. Councillor Kushner.
I'll kick it off, Madam Mayor. I noticed in protective services, we only looked at fire and 911, and we didn't look at any RCMP costs that went up over year. What would that be year over year? Sorry, through to administration, sorry.
Through to Councillor Kushner, I'll just have to find 2,100 and I can let you know. It didn't change from the interim budget, so that's why you didn't see an increase from there.
No, I think it's just real good for residents to know how much more we're paying for these protective services year over year.
Yeah, so last year we had, it's about 100,000
Okay,
for, and that's policing for RCMP.
right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Langridge.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through to administration. I know I've asked this question before, but looking into our protective services and our fire especially and 911 combined, you're looking at an increase of 235,784. Now, have we gone back to our friends at BRFA to understand that ask and increase from our interim budget?
Our CAO Winfley did have a discussion with the CAO of the BRFA. I had a quick conversation, so I'm just going to go over what I can remember. Other than that, we would have to invite CAO Sam back to our GMP committee meeting or provide any questions to him to get further answers and clarification from council. I do know that some of the increases are due to building repair and maintenance costs increase. There's some IT infrastructure as well as cybersecurity software that's required. There are some HR services under the shared services budget now that was never had a separate budget before. And a lot of it is to do with, sorry, I'm just going to read my quick notes here. Some for the wages and stuff in the HR, it has to do with the benefit allocations for pension plan and other areas. Anything further that you would like to know, I would have to bring to CAO Sandbeck directly.
Yeah, I mean, it would be probably valuable. That's a pretty significant increase in a short amount of time from 418,000 to 586 just in fire alone. And not understanding the full split of how that works because of our partnership with the MD of Bonnyville and so forth. That's still one that jumps out to me looking throughout the entire budget. Of a pretty significant number and not just pocket change for a lot of this. So that's still one that I would be questioning on.
If council would like, we would invite him to the GMP meeting on the 21st.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. Okay, any other questions? All right, we do need to have a discussion on giving direction on where we'd like to go for the tax increase, residential and non-residential. Does anybody have any? Where do you want to go? Councillor Langridge?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Everyone's favorite topic of conversation. Throughout our last term and into this one, we've really tried to keep an even keel base when it comes to tax increases. We knew going into our previous term that there hadn't been very many, not any, for about 8 years previous. So we've held the line on that 2%, and I think it's a little bit easier one for our residents to swallow. I would like to see our 2% increase remain there. We know that the people will see on their bill a little bit more of an increase because of our friends with the Alberta government requisitioning more for the education tax. We know that's already going up about 8.1%, unless that's changed. I think it's still around that area, but so personally, I would say we hold the line at the 2% when it comes to residential, and I would also recommend we keep the mill rate adjustment for non-res at 1.7 times, as we also have a long-term tax strategy on that we're trying to achieve in the next few years to to bring it up. If you pull up one of the information that was given to us by administration for tax rate comparisons, when you look at mill rates, we're still the lowest between all of our neighbors, municipal neighbors, I will say. I'm not going to count the RMs and the counties, and when you look at non-res, we're also still the lowest when comparing it to a lot of our municipal neighbors. So we know costs are going up. We've had that talk and conversation this entire time, but I would, my opinion is to hold the line at the 2% residential and then the 1.7 time rate for non-res.
Okay, thank you. Any other conversation? Oh, sorry, Councillor Blanchard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I tend to agree with Councillor Langridge. And then if you just looking at the background information that we were provided, that when we originally had this discussion, we were prepared to do a reserve transfer of 607,000. This would bring us down to 240. So I think that we're in a much better position given the assessments that have come in.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kushner.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. So we have, correct me if I'm wrong, through the administration, about 2.5 million in reserves, somewhere in that range. Is that correct?
That's correct, in our general operating reserve.
Okay. So worst case scenario, we're at 240, 250, so that's about 10% of our reserves that would be gone. We had to approve a budget last year with a reserve amount. Do we remember what that reserve amount was? Sorry, I keep on putting you on the spot here.
Give me 1 second here.
Because I tend to remember more than 240,000.
At the end of the budget amount for 2025 final budget was 774,975. The actual deficit was $182,074.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I guess I'll be a little bit different. You know, I'd like to see us be less reliant on our reserves. I'd like to see us at least go at 2.5% on residential. Maybe holding the line at 1.7 on non-residential. I mean, we talked about 2% in the fall, so I think it would be a modest increase. I wouldn't be comfortable going to 3%. I think that would be a substantial jump. But I think in the long term, I'd like us to be less reliant on reserves. I think if we continue to transfer, you know, it just doesn't set us up in the long term, and that's what we continue to be doing. So for myself, I think this would be a measured approach, just kind of going up to that 2.5 at this point for this year, and then, you know, maybe reevaluating in the next couple of years. But that's where I would sit. Yeah. Anybody else? Deep in thought.
If I may, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Kushner?
So you're saying 2.5 and at 1.7?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, it still can, I mean, we still remain lower in tax rates than, you know, some of the other, some of our other peers in the area. So, I mean, on that front, we're still competitive. But I'm open to council's will, but that is where I would sit. Councillor Johnson. Say your first name.
Turn the nameplate. For this year, I would say I would still rather see us at the 2% tax increase. Just, I know where you're coming from, and I understand that fully and whatnot. And yes, we have to be less reliant on reserves. Just with all the increases that have been out there, I want to try and keep it as minimal as we can on the residents right now, and keep to our long-term strategy on it. So I'm kind of more in favor of the 2% and the 1.7 myself.
Councillor Schur?
I also will agree more with the 2% and 1.7, and we've got a lot of unknowns in 2026. The fuel surcharge, like there's a whole bunch of things going on in our world that are affecting us. So I would be comfortable with the 2% this year and the 1.7, and then really reassess it next year depending upon what happens this year. And I know I agree with you, not pulling out of the reserves all the time. You know, we have to become self-sustainable. I know we also discussed about our fees for use, our water, our sewer, stuff like that. So maybe we can take a more in-depth study into all those next year, depending upon what happens this year. That's kind of where I'm leading with it as well. Just again, there are so many unknowns, and we may be, I don't know what we could be looking at depending on how long this state of affairs takes on this year.
I don't know, do you want a motion, or sounds like we have consensus
Yeah,
of
based
where
on-
council is interested? Is there any other comments, or? Councillor Langridge?
Just one more comment, Madam Mayor, and I think the other thing to keep in consideration is there will be a little bit of a sticker shock with our assessments that have came back. That's also gonna make a change in that as well. So that's again, some of the reason why, but again, looking into when people do see it, they will see their assessed value typically going up by an average of 4% as well. So just something to keep in consideration.
Thank you. Okay. All right, anything else? All right, so it looks like direction is, if you can bring that back for the 28th, then we're looking at 2% with a 1.7 on res.
Will do.
All right, good. Council? We're good? Okay. Okay. All right, okay, 2026 final capital budget draft.
The 2026 final capital budget as attached totals $23,617,763 and reflects updated costs since the passage of the interim budget in December, as well as new projects that have been identified, unfinished projects from the 2025 year, which also has a corresponding revenue to pay for those projects, and suggestions for project deferrals to ensure a balanced capital budget. Future grant revenue is anticipated to be 1.5 million per year, and that includes the local government fiscal framework and the Canada Community Building Fund. Changes included in this draft of the capital budget include an increased amount for branding initiatives, and that is partly due to a carryover from 2025. Increased the cost for installation of the loader grapple bucket, increased for the purchase of a V bucket, and included the purchase of an additional water truck. For the town shop, we've decreased the cost of the public workshop design. For public works, streets and paving, there's the deferral of the Highway 28 tree planting for 1 year as there's some Highway 28 upgrades being done. Storm and sanitary sewer, there's an increased cost to the southeast lift station capacity upgrades, and that's due to the carryover from 2025 of about 900,000. And the deferral of servicing for the rodeo grounds for 1 year as there's a rec plan being done this year. For FCSS, there's updating the cost of the FCSS building and the deferral of the building construction for 1 year. For planning and development, included the cost to begin the downtown revitalization strategy with signage, public realm items, and the lighting. The swimming pool, there's the cancellation of the aquatics facility as currently designed, and we've included the cost of a swimming pool with the construction anticipated for 2028. Parks and sports fields, there's the addition of the recreation plan for the Bougie Ball Diamonds, the addition for the completion of an uptown area master plan at the C2, and the addition of the demolition of the Nelson Lumber Building. For the library, there's the addition of design for a new library to coincide with the construction of an FCSS building within a year. This draft also includes, as stated previously, all the carryover projects that remained unfinished at the end of 2025 with corresponding revenue to cover these costs. We are asking that Council advise administration of any changes to the proposed draft of the 2026 capital budget to be presented for consideration and approval at the April 28th council meeting.
Okay, any questions? Okay. Do we have any changes proposed? Counselor Langridge?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through to administration, in regards to the project at the southeast lift station, I knew we had budgeted $1 million last year, and now this year, it's increased quite a bit in the ask. I believe it's where did it go here? $4.9 million now. Will that complete the entire project that we have on the southeast lift station?
Yes, that 4.9, so the problem, the scope is, it's an old building. It was built in the 80s, refurbished in the early 2000s. And so it's a matter of scope. And so when we started this last year, we weren't exactly sure on the scope. And now, after we've had a chance to dig into it, we're recommending some piping replacement, electrical upgrades, complete refurbishment of the building, while we're trying to keep the existing concrete shell. So the scope has gone about as far as it could with while keeping the shell, and the expectation is that should fall within the budget identified in the capital budget.
So essentially, we're looking to, like, the building itself is still structurally sound. It's just updating everything else that's inside of it. And that will give us a pretty long leeway of life for that building, that is the main building that pumps the town's sewage, so.
Yes, correct. So all of the wastewater in town goes to that building, and then that lift station pumps it out to the lagoon. And so it is critical. It is big and it is deep. So everything is, it's just more effort to work on that scope and size. And the hope, I shouldn't say hope, the plan right now is to keep the concrete, obviously, like the frame, the shell. Obviously, we're gonna have to do some testing, some integrity testing, condition assessments to make sure that we can, and that'll be done early in the process, but that should fall within the approved budget, or the proposed budget.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? All right, we're good. All right. Move along. Committee reports. We'll start with Councillor Johnson, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. All right, so on March 25th, I attended the elected officials meet and greet with Northern Light Public Schools. So it was a chance to get together with City of Cold Lake, Town of Bonnyville. There was officials from all the school divisions, from Lac La Biche and all around. So it was a great to get together, hear what they all are up to, and possible synergies working together. March 26th, I was at the FCSS board meeting. March 27th, I did filming for the health gala coming up. April the 1st, Bonnyville Affordable Housing AGM. And today I had an events committee meeting at noon here at Town Hall. And that's all for me.
Okay, mine short and sweet. March 25th, 26th, and 27th, I went to the Alberta Munis Leaders Conference with Madam Mayor, the CAO, and Councillor Sharoon. And then on March 30th, we had our budget workshop. And that's all I have.
Okay. For myself, on March 25th, I attended a roundtable called Lift Her Up. It was to discuss gender-based violence in political life and strengthen safer and more respectful democratic spaces. On March 26th to the 27th, I attended AB Muni's Leaders Caucus. It was a really good 2 days. We had opportunities to ask questions to the Premier and ministers. So I thought all in all, it was a really good conference. I enjoyed it. March 30th, we had the budget workshop, and then in the evening, I had the pleasure of attending Father Renee's 70th birthday celebration. April 2nd, sorry, I had a meeting with, through NAGO, with Councillor Fadeu at the MD of Bonnyville, with Minister Dreeshen regarding Highway 28. Try to get that out. And then today I am now on a steering committee with RPAP, planning a Northeastern Regional Summit, which will be bringing leaders together in Smoky Lake to discuss local challenges and opportunities in healthcare. That's it, all for me, thank you.
Why, thank you, Madam Mayor. Not too much for me. On March 26th, I joined our friends from the Bonnyville FCSS and all their bunch of their partners for the Link Up program that they're starting. I'll let Councillor Blanchette talk about it because she knows a lot more than I do, but it was great to see people up at the C2 using the track. I got a lap in. Then I was at the C2, signed checks on the 27th, the budget workshop on March 30th. This afternoon, I had an Alberta Winter Games meeting. I hope we're almost done. We're getting closer. And that is it for me.
Thank you. On March 30th, I had the budget workshop. On March 25th, part of my allowance for training and education, I took the strategic planning through the elected officials education program. And then on behalf of Alberta Munis, I did attend the Spring Municipal Leaders Caucus on the 26th and 27th of March. And that's it.
Excellent, thank you. March 26th, as Councillor Langridge reported, we attended the launch of the new social prescribing program, which is a grant-funded initiative through Healthy Aging Alberta being delivered through FCSS. And I understand that Bonnyville was the first community this grant cycle to launch, so that's really something to be proud of. That evening, I attended the FCSS board meeting, and because I have a short committee report this time, I'm just going to highlight some of the stats for you all. From January to March, our FCSS staff supported 53 unique individuals with system navigation and assisted 49 individuals with information and referrals. For the community volunteer income tax program that they participate in, they had completed 235 tax returns for residents with modest incomes, and that resulted in approximately $2.6 million in benefits being returned to individuals and families in our community. And just a few upcoming initiatives. The FCSS will now be offering a monthly ages and stages screening for children entering school, so they will be able to access supports early on before they enter school. Work is underway to establish a toy lending library with a focus on inclusive and specialized toys for children with neurodivergent diagnoses. And then on May 6th, FCSS will be hosting a free community event featuring Olympic medalist Cheryl Bernard, and she'll be speaking on resilience, and that will include a daytime session as well as an evening session, and council will receive an invitation shortly. And then March 30th, budget workshop, and then this afternoon, as Councillor Johnson reported, we had an events committee meeting where we discussed some of the specifics related to Canada Day. That's all for me.
Madam Mayor, if I can add something I forgot. On behalf of the Chamber, you're all invited on April 9th to the French Cultural Center at 4904 50th Street for the public forum for our councillor position coming up in the next municipal election. Please submit your questions to admin@bonnyvillechamber.com. We are also having our Business Support Network meeting on Friday, April 17th at the French Cultural Center as well. Our special guest, MLA Scott Sear, will be speaking. And again, the Chamber is putting on a job fair April 22nd at the C2 in the Hub. It's free to attend as the job fair, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next, we have a proclamation, National Day of Mourning, April 28th, 2026. Whereas too many families, friends, and communities continue to experience the profound loss and lifelong impacts caused by preventable workplace tragedies. And whereas the town of Bonnyville stands in solidarity with workers, employers, unions, safety organizations, and residents in reaffirming our commitment to preventing further workplace injuries and fatalities. Now therefore, the town of Bonnyville hereby proclaims April 28th, 2026 as the National Day of Mourning in the town of Bonnyville. All right, then next we have our community organization funding up to April 1st, 2026. Any questions for administration before we move into camera? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through to administration. It's been a challenging winter, and it still doesn't want to give up as of today with all the snow. We've had a lot of thaws, freezes throughout the winter, which has caused a lot more issues, I would say, with the culverts out there, and creation of a lot of potholes, which pop up a little bit more with that. Can we just get an update how that's coming along with administration and public works and kind of the plan moving forward with it?
Yep, thank you. So, yes, so you mentioned it, the freeze thaw cycle it's pretty tough. Those are tough on our roads and our ditches, and we've had a lot of that this spring, if you can call it a spring. But we have been out thawing culverts and doing catch basins, and you know we're in most cases, like this last weekend, it's almost like we've had to start over again. So we were out on the weekend, we were out on Monday. So we're working on it, and we have, and so getting to the potholes, like we have, it's tricky to fill potholes in the spring just because it's all, you know, underwater and whatnot. But we have had crews out filling potholes, and so, you know, and we will be monitoring that, you know, moving forward. So we're hoping to get a handle on all that here shortly.
Okay, thank you very much. And one more question. With the B City app, there is actually a spot on there where you can take a picture and report potholes, I believe, on there. Is that correct? I believe there is, right?
Yeah. I think so.
I believe I've seen it on there, so I'll just throw that out there. If the
There is a-
residents see that, they can sign up for the app and actually report it, and we can put it on the list.
There is a place for service
Yeah.
reporting, yes.
Okay, thank you. All for me.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Not so much a question. I just want to give some kudos out to all the hard work that's went through to try and get this budget to where it needs to get to, and the financial audit that we've just went through. I know how much work that is, and I appreciate all of your guys' work and how much and how dedicated you are to keep us on the straight and narrow, even if we don't take the 2.5%. It's still, thank you so much. I appreciate it very much.